I had a request from one of the members to, she wasn't going to be able to attend tonight, so I said I would record it, and then I'm going to have to figure out how to distribute it. So, but this first slide is a picture of a field trip that we did last year at paint mines in El Paso County. And you can see that everyone, this is at the beginning of the trip, everyone has coats on. And within probably, I would say, a half hour to 45 minutes, the coats were off because it gets pretty hot there, but it can be very windy. So, okay. The field trips that we're going to talk about today are all scheduled. They're all in the CoNPS calendar. And we have 6 in El Paso County, then we have 1 in Chaffee County, 3 in Teller County, and 1 down in Fremont County, and 1 in Douglas County. So we've moved them around a little bit. I know that people who are down south, we don't have anything down near Rye in Colorado City, but hopefully maybe as we work at it, we can get through there and have some more field trips. The photos that you're going to see are mine that I've taken over the years, not necessarily on field trips, but other hikes that I've done. There are some photos that are by another person, and I'll indicate that. The scientific names I'm using are based on Acrofield Explorer of Colorado from 2015. The common names are ones that I use, and so they may be different than what you have been accustomed to. And then I want to extend a thanks, even though no one else is here, to the people who are leading the field trips this year. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those people as we go along. The first field trip of the year is the Tunnel Drive in Canyon City. I went on this one, I think, in 2016 for the first time. And it's a very nice early season field trip. The main thing of interest is the claret cup cactuses. And some years you will see many of these cactuses in bloom. Sometimes it's just a few of them. And sometimes, unfortunately, the ones that are in bloom are 40 feet up in the rocks. So getting pictures is not always guaranteed. For those of you who are new to native plants a little bit, I put in here, this is a claret cup cactus with the scientific name Echinoceras triglochodocus. If you go to other cactus books, or specifically cactus books, a lot of the cactus people and experts say this is actually Echinoceras cocienus. However, because I said I'm using Acrofield, if you go and read Acrofield, she talks about trying to separate out triglochodocus and cocienus, and she said it's not workable, so she lumps them together. So, and for those of you who are new to the scientific stuff, that may be the extent of my scientific discussion for the rest of the day. So that's enough to kind of make your head hurt a little bit anyway. There's a lot of other good flowers down there. We have the tufted evening primrose, which is nice big white flowers. And then we also have its cousin, which will come up next. This is the tunnels that Tunnel Drive is known for. So they ran a wooden water pipe through these tunnels to get water from the Arkansas River down towards Canyon City. And then they turned this into a scenic drive. And this used to be Royal Gorge Boulevard, I think. And now it's a walking trail and a biking trail. One of the interesting plants, if you there is the white stem blazing star. It's in the genus Mencelia. It doesn't look like the normal Menselia that a lot of people talk about and see. So, and then throughout the summer and even in the spring, you are well up above the Arkansas River, and so you'll see a lot of times you'll see rafts coming in that have gone through the Royal Gorge. They come down to a point across from the Tunnel Drive, and there's a takeout where the buses come, they load up the rafts and take people back to their cars and back to the businesses. So, okay. Oh, the other thing is, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them into the chat, and then we'll stop periodically to see if there's anything there. Are there any questions at this time, Carrie?
Not yet, Curt.
Okay, thanks. All right. The second field trip is Spruce Mountain Open Space. This is up in Douglas County, just across the county line. And this is a picture of Spruce Mountain. It's a flat-topped hill. I'm not sure what the geology is of it, but if you get up on top, it's a ponderosa, mostly ponderosa pine forest. And the thing that you find up there are these Rocky Mountain spring beauties. Depending on how the year, these can be all over the place, or you can only find a few here and there. These are probably 2 or 3 inches tall. You also see kinnikinick. A lot of times you see the leaves of this plant, but it's not often that you see the flowers. And this is what the top of the mountain looks like. You've got a lot of ponderosa pines, and then you've got the underbrush of shrubs. And there's actually a lot of flowers up here on top of this flat top piece. The field trip probably will not get up here for most people. For those of you who have not been on a Native Plant Society field trip, what you find is that you get out of the car, you get to the trailhead, and you start walking. And 3 hours later, you might have gone a half mile or a mile if you're lucky. People don't go very far and don't go very fast on a Native Plant Society hike. An interesting flower that you find in Spruce Mountain is the blue-eyed Mary. These plants are a couple of inches tall, and the flowers are like 1/4 to 1/2 inch in size. And a lot of times you find this flower next to it or nearby, which is the slender phlox. When you park at the trailhead of Spruce Mountain, you can see this Eagle Mountain, which is across the meadow from it. And I believe this is on private land. You can't get there from the actual Spruce Mountain open space. So you do have a variety of things here. You have a nice meadow, and then you have this upland and kind of mesa top with the ponderosa pine forest. So. Next, we go to the paint mines. This is a park within El Paso County. It is named for the colors of the clays that you find in the area. The Indians apparently used it to paint either their war paint or paint different objects. They've got the colors from that. This happens to be from, this picture is taken from the West Overlook, which is a nice area where you can actually look down on the different canyons. And here we have some hedgehog cactuses. These are interesting because instead of just having the yellow-green flowers that a lot of this particular cactus has, you have the the yellow on the inside, and then you have these red-orange on the outside. It's a little more colorful than what you would see like in Colorado Springs. Also there, and hopefully this year we'll be able to find it again, is this yellow version of the whole leaf Indian paintbrush. Normally this is a red-orange plant. I found this 2 out of the 3 years I've been there, and hopefully we'll be able to find this again. And there's the red version is quite abundant, and you'll see many plants across the field as you're walking around. Here's another look into another set of canyons. There are trails where you can walk into these most of the time. They're working really hard to keep people from climbing up on top of the various buttresses. Unfortunately, people are not very good about obeying that rule. Another Castanea or Indian paintbrush species is the downy painted cup. And this is not common there. We can usually find it, but it's not a common species. And then you can see here that we have the canyons are down in this area, and then we're looking west towards Pikes Peak. And if you come down to El Paso County, Teller County, in that area where I've done most of my hiking, you get to the common thing about most of the hikes is you can see Pikes Peak. And over the last 6 or 8 years, I have almost every view of Pikes Peak in a photo, except for the south, because you don't get to the south very much. All right, any questions?
No questions at this point, but Jan did bring up a good thing, and I know you participate in this too, Curt, that the CoNPS Facebook group is a good place to be looking for recent photos from field trips and things like that. And she just happened to mention someone's got some really good photos of Claret Cup and other good natives there. But you participate in that, don't you?
Yes, yeah. It's and if you are new to CoNPS and you happen to be a Facebook person, I found that it's quite interesting because people will post things and ask for help, or people will post things and not ask for help, but they'll get help. And there can be some fairly interesting discussions about what a particular plant is and why it's that. People will tell you why it should be this, why it should be that. So it's a good way to learn. And one of the things they have is a Test Yourself Tuesday, where they post a picture of a plant and then let people talk about it. They try and get people who are less knowledgeable to come up with their ideas, and then the experts will weigh in later to kind of help set everybody straight. So if you're looking for a place to get information, and you can sort of do as much as you want to with it, looking at the different things. And then the other thing you get to see is Jim Kasarowitz from the West Slope is an amazing photographer. And I think today when I was looking at it, he posted like 10 different things of plants from the southwestern part of Colorado. So, but very, very good photographs. So good thing to bring up. Thanks, Jan. Okay. All right. Okay, so this is the only field trip of the 12 that I'm showing you today that I have not been on in the area. And Brigitte is going to lead the field trip off of the Colorado Trail in Chaffee County, and all these photographs are hers. And I was hoping that she might come to the meeting, because I wanted to say that I think I told her this in an email. This to me is an amazing photograph of Calypso orchids, because all of them are in focus. All of them are very bright. And so many times you get a group like this and the back is out of focus or dark, It's really hard to get this much detail in a photograph like this. And this is the main point of interest for her in leading this field trip, is these Calypso orchids. There are also the Western Red Columbine, can be found there, and regular blue columbines or Colorado columbines. And you realize that even though they're called the blue columbine, they can be in various colors, in various shades of blue and even completely white. So there are variations. This is the Canadian buffalo berry, which apparently grows over there. This is just a picture of what it looks like around this Colorado Trail hike. And Mount Yale is in the distance. Okay. This is another one. It's in Teller County, the Florissant Fossil Beds National Monument. Tom Greene is going to lead this. Tom did one last year, and we went on the east side of the Teller County one, and the east side of the Florissant Fossil Beds. This year he's going to go on the west side, so it'll be a little different than what we did. And these landscape pictures that you'll see are from the east side, and they were taken in June, so they're going to be a little different than what you may see on the western part of the monument if you go there. One of the things that, if you need a place to go in the fall, these aspens over here all turn very bright yellow or yellow orange. This particular valley that this pond is in has many examples of very nice fall colors. Go about the 1st of October if you want to go. And here is the typical whole leaf Indian paintbrush in the red orange. You also get Perry's milk vetch, which is a low growing plant, and it's a white milk vetch instead of a purple one. Their mountain ball cactuses are out there. They're not common, but we did see a couple last year. These have the pink flowers with the yellow center. The cactus itself can be 2 or 3 inches across, all the way to 6 or 8 inches across. And then wild iris. The eastern part of the monument has some very good areas for wild iris in there. So. The main part of the eastern part of the monument, the trail goes to Twin Rock, and that's what these rocks up here. I am told if you are a climber, you can get up the backside. I've never tried it. I think it's probably more than I would want to do. Here's another patch of aspens, and I have a number of pictures of this in the fall where this is a bright yellow. The next field trip is June 15th. The leader is Doris Drisgill. Doris led the first field trip that I went on, which happened to be this Pikes Peak-Elk Park field trip. She was very encouraging to me to learn the plants, very helpful at giving me names, trying to convince me to go on more field trips, to go with her hiking group. And so she and I have been friends since I started doing this. And this is an example of the field trip. Here's where the car started, and here's where the people are. And I think this is a good hour into the field trip. But you can see, if you look carefully here, there's yellow, there's blue, there's a lot of different wildflowers out here in this tundra area. This is the Alpine dwarf columbine. These This particular plant is very nice for photography because it actually was standing up and spread out a little bit. A lot of times you'll find these plants tucked in rock crevices. The flowers are barely visible, and you have to really get down and lay on the ground almost to take good pictures of them. This one was very cooperative. The alpine primrose. This is a plant that's probably 8 to 10 inches across. Normally, you do not see this large of a assemblage of flowers. Usually, they're 2 or 3, or maybe 4 or 5. I've never seen one like this since I took this picture. There's also the boreal rock jasmine. One of my addictions is iNaturalist. If you are into native plant identification, it's a wonderful place to spend part of your day. And each morning I usually get an email telling me who has either corroborated the identification of a plant or corrected my identification of a plant or whatever I've posted. This particular flower is called what? Androsaceae Sharma-Jasmine. Anyway, that is now Androsaceae lemanii in iNaturalist. So people are changing the names of species, even though you think the scientific names may be sort of constant. Apparently, there's a move to separate some of the alpine species that are in the United States from the Eurasian similar species. So this is one that has had that done to it. So far, I'm sticking with the old name until Ackerfield comes out with their next edition, and then I'll change if she changes. The one thing I wanted to mention about this particular flower is that you see all of these have yellow centers. It's very interesting when you can find a group of flowers like this and you see yellow, orange, purple, red, different colored centers. It makes a much more interesting photograph. And this is one of the mat plants that live up in the tundra there on Pikes Peak. So these flowers are like 1 inch high. And then here's another one that's the same, about 1 inch high, the alpine forget-me-not. This is another one that has, the iNaturalist has changed the name of it. Here you can see another view of Pikes Peak. This is the Elk Park Trail as it's going across this slope. This eventually takes you down to Bar Camp if you want to go that far. The field trip, people in the field trip will make it probably down into here. There's a very interesting, there's different wildflowers when you go through the trees, and then some different ones on this particular slope. Another Doris Drisgill field trip to another wonderful area with more wonderful flowers is Emerald Valley. If you're familiar with Colorado Springs at all, there's a place called a road called Old Stage Road that goes west of Colorado Springs. It's a gravel road. It can be not very much fun to drive on. It eventually meets up with Gold Camp Road and goes all the way to Victor. Before you get to Victor, and before you actually get too far, you come to the Emerald Valley Ranch, which is owned by the Broadmoor, one of the many things that's owned by the Broadmoor in this area. But at the gate to Emerald Valley Ranch is a parking area, and you can walk up the road into the National Forest, go over another gate, and get into Emerald Valley, where you find some very wonderful flowers. This picture was from last year. My wife and I went up there because we couldn't go on the field trip. We went up and it had just rained the day before. Everything was nice and wet, and it was kind of hazy there. So you get to, at this time of the year, you do see your standard blue columbines. There's another interesting plant up there called a bunchberry dogwood. When I first went up there, I was with George Cameron, who is the real botanist, and I walked by this patch of flowers and plants in the tucked under the trees, and I thought it was just another patch of strawberries. But then George corrected me and said, no, this is a dogwood. And what you see here, these white appendages or structures are not petals. I'm not sure whether they're modified leaves or whether they're modified bracts, but in here you'll see that there's multiple flowers. So this is a composite flower with many flowers in here, but if you walk by them quickly, you would mistake them for strawberries. They're about 1 inch high, maybe 1.5 inches high off the ground. And they're in a, there'll be a whole bed of them there. Emerald Valley is the site of the former Emerald Valley Boys Camp. So you have the chimney and fireplace from the old main lodge or whatever, and there's some parts of the foundations. This actually is an interesting place for flowers because it's open, it's been disturbed, so you get a lot of different things that you don't see elsewhere on the trail. This is another variation on the Colorado columbine or blue columbine. The thing about this one is there are no spurs sticking out behind here. So it's a spurless variety. And it also has usually multiples of 4, usually 8 petals. This guy has 1, 2, 3, 4. So I think this guy has 10. He has many more petals than a normal columbine. The hard part about this, finding these guys, is they can be mixed in with the regular spurred columbines. And you have to find the individual one that doesn't have the spurs. Okay. And this is the heroine, or the, I guess, the piece de resistance of this particular trip. This is the yellow lady slipper orchid. I mentioned that you park next to the gate for the Emerald Valley Ranch and then go up a road to another gate. The gate was put in, and the fence around it was put in to protect the yellow lady slippers because, unfortunately, people were using the Emerald Valley Trail as a 4-wheel drive ATV racetrack. And so it potentially led to destroying the habitat and destroying the yellow lady slippers. Now that the gate is there, you don't get the motorized traffic in there. Everything is becoming a little more overgrown, a little more rugged, and I think the lady slippers are doing much better. So. And here's another picture of a rock. Gives you an idea. There's some aspen, there's some chondroses and things like that. Okay. Do we have questions, Carrie?
I have one question. When were you in that Emerald Valley area? So did you see the orchids and the columbine at the same time?
Yes, yes. So that's, what was it? I think it's the 23rd of June is when this is scheduled. And yes, we saw both of them all at the same time. So. Okay, so Jan, you said you didn't find them. Yeah.
I didn't know the spurless were there. I was mostly focused on those beautiful lady slippers and
okay, yeah.
Find them. So
actually, I didn't know they were there either until I think 2 or 3 years ago we were up there, and one of the people on the field trip had found them, and I went back and was able to get the pictures that I took. And then this last year I went back and found a different spot that had a different plant. So
Awesome.
okay. All right. So, and we get to the Doris's third field trip. She has them all right in a row. This is another one up to the west of Colorado Springs, but this is in North Cheyenne Canyon, and it's Buffalo Creek. And if anyone, I know that some of you may not be familiar with the area, but there's a trail that goes up to St. Mary's Falls, and this Buffalo Creek, the trail goes along Buffalo Creek. So if you go up to the parking lot above Helen Hint Falls, you walk Gold Camp Road, Lower Gold Camp Road for about 1.5 miles and come to the collapsed tunnel and go up and around there. Then you'll get to the Buffalo Creek. And this again is in July. Oh, the wonders of technology. Okay. No, here we go. Okay. One of the plants that you find there, actually almost in Buffalo Creek most of the time, is this self-peel Vanilla vulgaris. The plants are probably 8 to 10 inches high, and these flowers are like 1/4 of an inch to maybe 3/8 of an inch high. Okay. This plant, the flowers look not much bigger than the ones we just saw, but these flowers are probably 1 inch long. The plant itself is 2 to 3 feet tall, so it's a towering lousewort. I think in some places it's called a giant lousewort. And then the main reason for going to Buffalo Creek in July is to see wood lilies. Doris talks about how in the probably early 1900s they would take wagon loads of people up there, and the ladies would actually walk through the valley and they would pick handfuls of these wood lilies. And so unfortunately there's not a lot left. I think at one year we counted about 70, and that's the most we've ever gotten there in a count period. Fortunately, most of the plants now are over near the creek. You find them among other plants. So if you're walking on the trail, you might not even notice these if you aren't looking for them. And this is just part of Buffalo Creek that flows through the area. Okay. Dave Elwonger has offered to lead 3 trips. These are all in Teller County. The photographs that you're going to see of the landscape are taken in early June. The field trip is going to be in late July. So it's going to be a little bit different, but you can see that we've got some aspen groves here. Those will be much more in leaf. The flowers will be a little different than you find in June. So what I did is since Dave had given me a list of flowers that he had found, and I pulled some photographs that I had from Lovell Gulch and other areas close by to give you an example of what you should be able to find in Women's Forest. This is a nice, fairly easy hike. There's some open areas, there's some riparian areas, there's a good variety of things there. Should be interesting. And it's up, divide is west of Woodland Park, if you don't know about that. So there should be some harebells out there. It's a good time of year to get bunches of harebells like this. Nodding onion, which is one of the wild onions that you can see in the Teller County area. It hangs over like that, so it's nodding. And this is what part of the trail looks like. It's kind of an open meadow area. There are some areas that are along the streams that are more riparian and wetter, so you get different plants there. You have sneezeweed. This is a picture from Level Gulch, but we do have sneezeweed there in the women's forest. Green gentian, one of my favorite plants, also called monument plant or elkweed. It has many, many flowers like this arranged along it, anywhere from say 2 feet to 6 feet tall, the stem of the plant. And then we don't have enough Pikes Peak views, so here's another one. You get a nice view of Pikes Peak from the women's forest. And you can see that there is a mix of conifers and aspens in a lot of this forest here. I haven't been out here in the fall, so I don't know what the colors are like, but I would imagine that there is some pretty good fall color there. The next field trip that Dave is going to lead is Level Gulch. It's become one of my favorite areas. There's a small creek running through it. This is up just north of Woodland Park. In fact, it's almost a city park for Woodland Park. For the first 2 or 3 years that I did a lot of hiking after I was retired, I hiked in Level Gulch, but I always hiked in the winter. And I finally got out there in the summer and saw what it was like and said, oh, this is a fun place to be. And so I usually go out at least 2 or 3 times every year to Level Gulch. So this is a King's ragwort plant, one of your yellow composites. These are police car moths. And there are 3 of them here, but what you don't see is this plant was probably 18 to 24 inches tall. It was probably 24 inches across and just heavy with these flowers. And these were 3 of probably 10 police car moths. There were probably another dozen butterflies there. There were bees, flies. The pollinators love this plant. The star gentian is there. It's one that you find in the wetter areas. Level Gulch has kind of a mix of a riparian along the stream, and then it has some more meadowy hillsides that are very nice. And up on top of the ridges, you get ponderosa pine, Douglas fir. These are a couple of friends of mine that I hiked with. One of the things about Level Gulch is there are several main trails, and then there are social trails that run up almost every gully, and there's social trails that are on top of every ridge. So you can hike almost anywhere in there. And the gentleman who's has this blue pack, his way of creating a hike for us to go on was to simply decide how many miles he wanted to go, and then he would put together going up this ridge, down this valley, up this ridge, down this valley, until he got the right number of miles, and then we would go follow his route. And for those of you who are worried about how getting out hiking as you get older, he's, I think, 77 in this picture. And one of the stars of the Level Gulch area is the Gunnison Mariposa lily. There are some years when the meadowy hillsides, grass-covered hillsides will be covered with Mariposa lilies. And then other years you only see one or two. They can range from the pure white to some that have a little bit of purple to even some that are even darker purple than this. And this is one of the trails there. Their trails are not marked, but they are, once you get used to it, you can find your way around pretty easily. All right. And this is Dave's third hike. So we have Doris Drisgill is going to lead 3 hikes. Dave Elwonger is going to lead three hikes. This is the crags. I don't know how many of you have been up to Mueller State Park, and you know, if you go a little farther down Highway 67 and go east, you will end up at the crags on a fairly rough road. And there's a big parking lot there, and you can hike to the crags. You can hike up to Devil's Playground and up to the backside of Pikes Peak. There are a number of other hikes in the area. And these are granite pinnacles. At this time of the year, you'll see the blue gentians, Gentiana perrii. If you're in the forest in the shade, you'll see the wood nymph. It's also known as single delight. These are probably 2 inches high. It's unusual to get one that's actually sitting up like this. Usually they hang over and make it very difficult to get any sort of photograph. You have Whipple's penstemon. And Whipple's comes in the purple variety. It also has a white or dusty variant. And I've actually seen some up in Crested Butte that is kind of a mix of the blue purple color and white, which was very interesting. And the trail leads up to the crags, actually leads up to this area on top where you have this old bristlecone pine. There's some other bristlecones up in the area. This one was just, I happen to like this picture. And you have rose gentians. Those can be anywhere from 2 inches to 10 to 12 inches high. The flowers are 3/8 of an inch across. They're in the dry, they can be in the drier areas. And this is kind of the Pikes Peak star, one of the Pikes Peak stars, the James Telesonic. It's a saxifrage. It loves Pikes Peak granite, and so normally you only find it in the Pikes Peak area and around the Pikes Peak batholith. This is also
there in August.
Pardon?
Are they there in August?
Yes, this is August. Yeah.
Wow, awesome.
I've seen them in June at the Elk Park, and it depends on the year. Sometimes you get up there in early August to mid-August and there's nothing left. Sometimes you get up there in early June and they're already out. So it depends. It also depends on how much, how exposed the rocks are too. So they like to be tucked in. They're kind of like the dwarf columbine. They like to be tucked in among the rocks. And so if they get a good area that has plenty of moisture, I think they bloom for quite a while. Here's another picture of the Crags rocks. Okay. And this is the last field trip of the year. It happens to be one that I'm going to lead. It's also the first field trip that I ever did. This will be the 4th installment. We're going to go August 7th. It's a Sunday. I'm trying to fit it around some other activities that we have going on that weekend. Red Rock Canyon open space in Colorado Springs was purchased by the city in 2003, and it happens to be about 0.8 of a mile from my house. So in the wintertime, I frequently walk from my house into the trails in Red Rocks rather than driving up there. In the summer, I drive up to a trailhead that's closer because then I get to spend more time in the park looking at wildflowers and less time walking on the streets. So, This is about 800 acres. Colorado Springs has done a very good job, in spite of some restrictions, of getting this open space and other contiguous areas and making a very nice, large, contiguous open space area with lots of trails accessible to people. It was proposed for development in around 2000. The gentleman who owned it wanted to put a golf course. He wanted to put houses, and neither Colorado Springs nor Manitou Springs would give him water. And so when he died, I think in 2001, then his son shortly thereafter agreed to sell the property to Colorado Springs. And I say thank you every day to Colorado Springs for buying it, because I spend a lot of time here. One of the things about early August, late July in Red Rocks is you have a lot of yellow composites. And one of the things that you hear people talking about are DYCs. And depending on your vocabulary, they may be darn yellow composites or damn yellow composites. That's because they're hard to separate, they're hard to identify, and there are so many of them. One of the common ones is this common sunflower. It's a composite flower because you have all the center part are individual flowers called disc flowers. Each of these is also a flower. It's a ray flower. So that a sunflower has a lot of flowers, and you'll see a lot of pollinators on this when they're ready to be pollinated. In Red Rock Canyon, one of the things that I liked about it and based my first field trip on was the fact that this time of year, at the end of July and beginning of August, there are a lot of yellow composites, and I called that yellow summer because there are prairie sunflowers, there's showy golden eye, golden crownbeards, golden aster, broom snakeweed, all are yellow composite flowers that bloom about this time. And in Red Rocks, you would periodically get places where there would be fields of these yellow flowers. Unfortunately, because of the work they've been doing in the open space to maintain roads and supposedly improve things and modify things, they have inadvertently destroyed a lot of the nice places where these yellow composites grew in abundance. And so they aren't as common, but you still get a lot of yellow at this time of year. An interesting plant that you find there's one spot in Red Rock Canyon that I found this. This is a horsetail milkweed. If you look at it closely, you can see that there are leaves that go all the way around the stem. There are whorls. These whorls are probably a ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch apart, and the plant is probably 18 inches high. There happens to be another species of milkweed that if you looked at it in the perspective that I have in this photo, you wouldn't be able to tell them apart, because the plains milkweed looks just like this. It's just that the plains milkweed is only 8 to 10 inches tall, and the whorls of leaves are only 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch separation. So it's interesting. There are several places I found the plains milkweed, but only this one place that I found this horsetail. The rocks on the east side of the open space are a little different. These are more of an orange. There's a lot of white rock as opposed to the red rock. Another flower that you find there that's a little bit unusual. My understanding from talking to George Cameron and reading some things about this plant, Colorado Springs is on the southern edge of this plant's range. This is called prairie goldenrod, and many of you would probably say this if you had done some studying, think this looks like an aster. And that's, if you read some descriptions of it, it says it's a goldenrod that looks like an aster. This was found only in the quarry within the Red Rock Canyon open space until I believe last year I found it in Garden of the Gods, and I found another plant at a different part of Red Rocks. So it's very localized. And this is the highlight for me of the field trip. These are the birdbill dayflowers. They have this modified bract, which in this shape. Many of you would probably, if you looked at these quickly, you would say this is a spiderwort. And a spiderwort has 3 petals that are virtually the same size. The dayflower has 2 larger petals and then a smaller petal below. And they are also, they're much more of a blue color, a deep blue color rather than the purple. And the blue of a spiderwort to me is different than this. If you see them side by side, it's pretty easy to tell them apart. When you can't see that, when you see one separated by the other, you have to look at them a little closer. We found these the first time I did the field trip. I've mentioned the name George Cameron before. He's helped me a lot on a lot of these field trips. We saw these, he immediately knew what they were. They're fairly unusual or rare in the Colorado Springs area. I guess Weber only had them in a couple of canyons near Colorado Springs. In Red Rocks, there are 3 or 4 different areas where they appear in large numbers, but they are not spread throughout the park. And it's nice that both this one and the goldenrod before are right on one of the main trails, one of the easiest trails to access Red Rock Canyon. And so it makes it really nice on the field trip. You can actually get to these 2 nice, very beautiful flowers and unusual flowers easily. Another view of the Red Rocks. There are many different valleys. They keep putting new trails in there all the time. They keep trying to close off the social trails, the road trails. And that is the end of the field trips. Any questions?
Hey, Curt, we did have a few questions. If you're ready to stop sharing your screen, one of the questions, I have a book or 2 to show, but Jan had a good question. Are all these field trips currently open for signing up, or are you doing them on a sort of a rolling basis? I know everything up to Elk Park was on there when I looked.
They're all available out on the CoNPS calendar.
All of them. Okay.
Yep.
And you can register?
Yes, you can register.
That's a little dangerous because sometimes people go in and they register for everything, and then a couple months later comes by and they either forget or so you're bold.
Well, it was one of those things where part of the problem with the field trips is getting the descriptions written, and I had all the descriptions written and okayed by the leaders, and I said, if I get them out there, I'm done. I'm sure that we'll try and send out reminders to people that they've been registered.
Yeah, that's true.
Kind of like I did with the meeting, to remind people that they did register, and I hope you're still planning to attend. So
cool. Okay. And then Susan had a good question, and this is the one where I thought if you stop sharing your screen, I can probably show some of these field guides. She wanted to know about if any of us had good local field guide recommendations with photos. And it's funny because it dropped in for me as you're doing your presentation. I don't know if people really know that, like, most people don't have this many terrific photos of all the wildflowers in our area. So Curt is kind of your best field guide, but he's a little heavy to carry in your pack.
Yeah. Well, why don't I do this? Let me finish up this last piece.
Okay.
I just wanted to do, and then I'll stop the recording, and then we can go do the any other questions, and I can let you share your screen and stuff like that. So one of the things that having being a photographer and maybe having a little too much time on my hands, I did create a little logo for the Southeast chapter with the birdbill dayflower, which is one of my favorites. But I wanted to say, I have to express again, even though no one's here to hear it that I thank everyone who's going to lead a field trip. We have a lot of field trips, and you may have thought that I was actually out there drumming up people to do field trips. I didn't do anything. I just kind of, Dave Elwonger said, I would like to leave these 3. Doris said, I'd like to leave these 3. I did ask Tom Greene if he would lead one in Florissant. I think he probably would have anyway. So, and then the 3 field trips I'm leading are 3 that I like to go on the hikes, and so I figured I could, might as well take a few people with me. So, but it's really nice to have so many people wanting to go on field trips or leading field trips, and it's nice to see that we have a lot of people who want to go on field trips, and so hopefully it will all work out this summer. So I already mentioned plant inventories. There's going to be a BioBlitz for Blodgett Peak open space. And then I hope that all of you, in spite of whatever your level of knowledge, will get out on April 29th to May 2nd and look at nature and participate in our chapter nature challenge. And just let me know that if you don't want to worry about names or anything like that, just say, I went out to this place on this day. That's all you need to send me. And we'll see how everybody does. So thank you so much. And I'm going to stop the recording.